Hi, I'm Dylan Citrin. I work at the American School of Milan. I teach psychology and humanities.
I'm Harris Grigoropoulos, and I teach 6th grade math and science at the American School of Milan.
Okay, so first question. Harris, let's start with you. Do you have or have you ever used a template for your lesson plans?
We are not required to use a specific template at the American School of Milan, but I have used a template in the past. The first 2 years of teaching, I used a very strict and formal lesson planning template. Yep.
And Dylan, how about you for templates? Have you used them before or do you use them now?
Yeah, I've used templates. It's really good for beginners. You should actually, at the beginning of a career, I think that most teachers should use a template because it keeps you very focused on time management, activities that lead towards learning outcomes instead of just activities for their own sake to fill up class time. And I think that templates are also an advantage so that you can keep a record of what you've done before. And it lends itself to organization as well. So I think it's a very good habit for new teachers.
Okay, great. How has your lesson planning changed from when you first started teaching?
I think it's kind of similar to what Dylan said. I started teaching with these very strict lesson plans, but then soon afterwards, when you start to get comfortable with the material and comfortable with the flow and the pace of your course or what you've been teaching, kind of starting to follow them a little bit more loosely and starting to take your own kind of independent approach to the planning technique. So that now, even though I did start using these very strict lesson plans, I don't necessarily do that at all anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that once you develop some experience, you have like sort of a quiver of strategies that you can use, and you can employ those strategies based on the preparation that students bring into the class. So for example, if you have a reading activity, then I already know I'm going to think, pair, share with students during the class, and then that's going to lead towards a bigger class conversation, and then that's going to pivot into a bigger assignment that brings in previous ideas on it. So like you don't need to sit there and plan it all out as much as you would. I think that comes from experience, your development of those strategies and knowing when it feels natural to use them. Also, if you have a better understanding of who your students are and the level that they're at, you adapt the strategies to that. In the end, it's all about the learning objective, and I think that you don't need to be so focused on the planning if you can be focused on whether or not students are achieving those learning objectives
Okay.
in class.
And so for 6th grade, do you plan your units or are they set ahead of time?
In 6th grade, I have the freedom to plan my own units, although we do follow the Common Core math standards. So you do have the guidelines from the Common Core standards to guide your planning, and you do have the text that you follow that has units roughly laid out for you, but I am at the liberty to create my own units and then therefore the individual lessons within those units.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at the school for long enough to be there when we wrote the humanities curriculum. So the units that are in the curriculum are the units that I wrote to begin with. So
Awesome.
Yeah, I write the units for the curriculum and for my own class.
Okay. This is kind of a big question, but how do you start planning a lesson?
Really just start by looking at the overarching learning goals within that unit, so you know exactly what the students have to know by the end of this 6-week, the end of this 4-week period, and then kind of chunking it into smaller, more attainable learning goals that you can achieve within one class period or within one week of time, and then just scaffolding upwards until the student is able to complete the overarching goals of the unit. So really kind of looking at your holistic unit and then just breaking it down into pieces that are easy for middle school students to attain.
Okay.
I agree.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, do you think of a skill mostly, or do you try to think of big questions? I know as an IB school we kind of talk about the essential questions, but in middle school we're not focusing on that quite as much. But are you thinking of a skill or a big question that you want the students to be able to think about and work towards?
Always a question. I think that it's always a question for me. The essential question is what guides every unit, and then within of that like umbrella of thinking and curiosity comes the skills that you want to identify along the way. But I think that there has to be a question that the evidence from the classes and the learning from the classes builds towards answering. Otherwise, it feels a little bit it feels disjointed. It doesn't feel like the lessons have a common thread or theme between them. Yes, you should have both, but it starts with the question.
And you use those skills, to help you answer the question. So you build on these skills to answer that overarching goal.
Okay. And how much time would you typically spend on one class period of a lesson?
Like
80 minutes?
planning the lesson?
Planning the lesson.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm lucky in that I've been teaching the same curriculum in middle school, the same grade level, for 3 years. So I do have this background of material and past lessons and resources and strategies that I've been using. So at this point, I'm able to look back at what I did last year when I taught this unit, or last year when I taught that lesson, and put things together pretty quickly. But then, of course, the skill of the students and their ability and the classroom dynamic does kind of, lead you to change things a bit along the way. But I don't know.
So the more that you are the more you teach, the more
because I feel
experience
more
you have.
comfortable with the content, and I
Right.
feel more, at ease with the strategies that I've been practicing, and I know what works, I know what doesn't work. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm kind of going to lump the last two in together. How closely do you follow it? And then if you see that a lesson is not working, what do you do? Because I've been in this situation, you kind of, as a new teacher, it's kind of hard to pivot and figure out a way to fix it. But do you have any times when you've planned out this lesson and then it just doesn't work?
Overplan at the beginning. Not like don't plan to fail or anything like that, but
Yeah.
like overplan so that you know you have more than you need, so that if something is not it isn't
You can go to
engaging,
something else.
you have something else
Okay.
to pull from.
And do you kind of go off track if you see that a discussion is happening that's interesting? Are you going to say, okay, I needed to reach these skill sets today? Do you stop the discussion and move on, or do you let it kind of happen
It
naturally?
depends on your pace and scope of the unit.
Okay.
If you've got enough time and something is engaging to the class, then that can make the entire unit. If you have a class that's engaging and lights kids up at the beginning of a unit especially, then I'll throw away the lesson plan completely and just focus on that, because that is going to provide like the foundation for the rest of your reference points for the rest of the unit, and that's a gift when that happens. So yeah, always go with whatever's engaging, so long as it's connected, and then you do the thinking to connect the rest of the missed lesson and the rest of the unit back to that sort of fertile area.
Okay.
As from the science perspective, it's easier to have those discussions and kind of to let that exploration happen in the class, and then at least what I do is tie it back to what it means to be thinking like a scientist and coming up with these theories. So it really does essentially tie back to these overarching bigger ideas that we cover in science. But unfortunately in math, if it goes kind of at all off track, I really pretty quickly have to bring it back. But it doesn't, you don't really get those
You're not.
hypothetical
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
philosophical discussions in the math class, at least in the middle school level. So
Okay. Great. Thank you, guys.
thank you, Allie.